Please unmute. I could not hear you.
Good morning, Professor Miwako Hosoda, foreign faculty of this GIAN 1 week online course on social capital and health in India. And good morning to all the participants coming from different parts of the country. This is the third day of this 1 week online course hosted by Department of Sociology, Aligarh Muslim University, and under the supervision of the nodal agency, that is IIT Kharagpur, sponsored by Ministry of Education, Government of India. This is the third day, and we have two lectures scheduled today, lecture 5 and lecture 6. Lecture 5, the title of lecture 5 is Cancer and Other Life-Threatening Disease in Contemporary Context. Can we make some difference? And the sixth lecture is on communicable and non-communicable disease in India, understanding the challenges. The first lecture will be delivered by the foreign faculty, Professor Miwako Hosoda, and the second lecture will be delivered by the host faculty, that is Professor Mohammad Akram. So now, I won't come between the foreign faculty and the participants who are eagerly waiting for. Just let me complete one or two. Right. So, Professor Miwako, you can unmute yourself and please start your lecture.
Okay, thank you very much. So, good morning, everybody. So this is the third day of online course. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here with you to study about the social capital and the health in India. So can I start, please? So I'd like to share this. Maybe someone makes some so right? Or maybe share the screen.
अच्छा इसमें एक और मतलब वीडियो सेटअप क्या कोई भी कोई मतलब वीडियो की सेटअप
Maybe it's better for me to wait for a moment. Okay, it seems fine. So let's start. So today I'd like to talk about the cancer and other life-threatening disease in contemporary context. Can we make some difference? So I'd like to talk on some the aspect of illness from the patient point of view. So let's start. So this is kind of the reflection. So first day, we learn about the difference of disease and illness. Do you remember? The disease is the one of the aspects from the medical professionals and the medical researchers. And illness is a perspective from patient or their family. This is a unique human experience. The loss of physical capacity and dysfunction and interference with life. So I think every participant recognize the difference of the two aspects, disease and illness. And the concept of illness is based on the sociological research about illness trajectory and illness experience and patient journey.
Madam,
Yes.
When you are mentioning illness trajectory, you are talking about, say, the progress from mild to moderate to severe form of the illness.
Excuse me?
When you say illness trajectory,
yes,
you mean to say the movement of the illness from a mild form to a moderate form, or to a severe form, or from a severe form to a moderate form? Is that in that sense?
So what does it mean, moderate form and severe form?
Moderate, mild illness.
Concept.
Is it mild illness, moderate illness, severe illness?
Yeah, there are many, the type of illness, but illness trajectory apply for every, the severeness of disease, like, even from moderate to severe, because the illness trajectory, you understand the meaning of trajectory, right? Trajectory is something to describe the path or way. So if the illness is severe or illness is mild, it doesn't matter. You understand?
Yes, madam. The progress of the illness in whatever way.
Yeah, sometimes illness, the physical condition or the dysfunction is going worse, but sometimes people recover. So the illness trajectory is kind of the neutral concept to express the way or path of the illness experience. Do you understand?
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so let's move. So it's the same thing, illness experience and patient journey. Sometimes people physical condition and mental condition get worse, but sometimes they recover or they can live with the illness and experience. So this is another theme, another topic of my presentation today. So we will go back to that concept. Okay. And this is the annual trend in death. So in Japan. Sorry, it is the year was written Japanese calculation. So the oldest S22 means almost the 1960s, and R3 means almost 2020. So in terms of the number of deaths in 2020, the cause of death, the highest one is the cancer. And the second one is heart disease. And third one is senility. And the fourth one is stroke. So currently, the cause of death is like this. But before, almost 80 years, it was different. The lung disease was the highest, and then also the stroke is highest. So to look at the cancer, before the number of the death caused by cancer is a little, but it is increasing. So there are the reason. The one of the reason is the long life expectancy, the longevity. If young people live long, the occurrence of cancer is increased. This is the death of the gastric cancer by age group. You can see the number. The horizontal one is the age, and the vertical one is the number. It is a number per 100,000. So if you look at this graph, the death by the cancer is dramatically increased after 50 years old. And the blue line is male and yellow line is female. But both after 50 years old, the number of deaths by the gastric cancer is increasing. As you may know, the cancer is the abnormality of the tissues. So the frequency of getting abnormality is increased when once people live longer. It is obvious. And this is the graph of the sort of cancer. This is the annual trend. Now, the cancer almost the one third to the 1 second. Yeah, almost half of the Japanese are diagnosed by cancer according to the data. And this graph shows the high frequency of cancer is colorectal cancer, and second one stomach cancer, and third one is lung cancer, and then liver cancer and pancreatic cancer following. The cancer is considered as a very special disease. When people, not in Japan, but many areas, people have many prejudice and stereotype about cancer. Susan Sontag, who is the American critic, and she wrote a book entitled Illness as a Metaphor. She wrote that the disease is treated as an evil and an invisible panther, and cancer is the most stigmatized in American society. And she insists illness is not a metaphor. And the best way to deal with illness is to clear away the metaphoric view of illness. So maybe in India, what type of metaphor or stereotype exist to cancer? For example, in Japan, people think the cancer is uncurable, and once people get cancer, people think that person will be die sooner or later. Like this, the cancer has a negative metaphor in Japanese society. How about in India? And I'd like to introduce another book. It is entitled The Emperor of All Maladies. It was written by the Siddhartha Mukherjee. He's American, but the family's origin in India. And Siddhartha Mukherjee wrote this book and said the culture and social aspect of cancer. This book describes the path of men's battle with cancer and how the people had faced it with repeated defeat, but also with hope. Actually, he recently commented on the magazine Time for like this. So for me to want to relieve your pain or your distress, whether by making a medicine or developing a science, is something both human and quite beautiful. He was also, but he is also a medical doctor. So he practiced, usually he's practicing the medical treatment at the hospital. And then he saw the patient, many patients, and then he wrote this book. So who is a patient? So we sometimes say patient, but who is patient? Society expects the patient in certain type and certain behavior. That is called sick role. Sick role is a concept which was introduced by the Talcott Parsons in 1951 in the book entitled Social System. And Talcott Parsons is considered as a founder of medical sociology. And is in medical sociology, the idea of sick role is one of the fundamental and attract people. So this idea, I think the sick have a socially expected, and the persons organized it in terms of two rights and two duties. The first is the right to be exempt from social roles, the normal social roles. For example, we have to go to school or go to work. It is a social role. We have to do that. And it is all usually imposed on a person. However, once people get sick, you don't have to do that role. And you can concentrate on your treatment and take your rest and to be able to come back to the regular social role. So, because the sick person have the right to exempt from the ordinary social role. And the second right is to recover from illness. If you are sick, you have the right to receive medical care, to use health insurance, and to recover your illness. So this is the second role. And next, the duty and obligation. Sick person also have obligation. The first of all, so you have the obligation to be able to recover from your illness and go back to your normal role as soon as possible. You are not allowed to be sick status for a long time. And the second one is to cooperate with medical professionals to recover. So once you you're hospitalized or you visit the physician's office, you have to obey the doctor's order, or like to, for example, take the medicine and take the rest, or you cannot discharge without the permission of doctor. So like this, sick people have some certain role from the society. So maybe you can see under the COVID-19 situation, when it comes to the education of children with illness and disability in COVID-19 situation, there is a need to prepare an environment where they can learn despite the illness and disability. So this is a traditional sick role. However, in contemporary situation, the sick role should be reconsidered. I think abilities. So before, when a person is diagnosed with cancer, the traditional role of the sick person is to have a right to be exempt from social role and right to recover from illness. However, if the patient is not allowed to come back to work or school, or if the patient is asked to concentrate only treatment, he or she will be deprived of his or her existing social role. As a cancer patient, you're socially isolated and marginalized. You will feel as if you alone, and if you got a cancer, this is knowing kind of the stigma or social discrimination. And cancer also has a stigmatized effect. However, it has been changing for my observation. The cancer patient also, many cancer patients are working and studying, but because of the metaphor of cancer, cancer patients are sometimes cut off from society, and the circuit to return to society is sometimes closed. The engagement of doctors, family member, and patient is completed, and the status. So the next slide shows the new cycle. So it is possible for the cancer patient to return to society due to the development of cancer treatment technology and early detection. So even if the people diagnosed with cancer, they have possibility and potential to come back such as the company and local government or the working place and schools. So we need to show new role model who are living with illness and cancer.
Question.
Yes.
In the previous slide, you mentioned, sir, also do we have stigma?
Oh, you don't have a stigma to the cancer patient in India?
Not as I understand. If it is, say, it is a mental patient or a psychiatric patient, then we usually associate, but otherwise with cancer, I am not aware.
Oh, that is interesting. So as I introduced the Susan Sontag and the Siddhartha Mukherjee, they pointed out there the severe stigma and discrimination for the cancer patient. So this is American context. And yeah, we in Japan totally agree with this, idea, because still now the cancer patient has stigmatized. But India, it is not like this. That is very interesting. Of course, as you said, the people with mental illness, they are stigmatized. So maybe it is kind of the common phenomena in states, Japan and India. However, the stigma against cancer is maybe different. That is very interesting. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
So next one is the slide which is show many people with cancer, not cancer patient with working while being treated for cancer. This is a graph, and the blue one is male, and the red one is female. And you can see the number. The vertical number is the age range from 15 years old to 39 years old, and 40 years old, and 49 years old, like this. And the horizontal one is the age, and vertical one is the number of people who are working, and the unit is 10,000. So, for example, in the male, and the age from 60 to 69, almost 60,000 male are working under treatment. So in total, 325,000 people are working, even they the treatment of the cancer. So this is from the survey which I conducted in 2018. And according to this survey, this is internet survey for the people with cancer, and the number of 3,094. We respond with it. And according to this survey, more than 80% of the survey respondents are employed, including the housewives and housewives, or in school. So many cancer patients actually working or studying. So this is kind of the amazing data. So some are employed by the company, and some have a part-time job, and some are self-employed. The percentage of housewife and husband is pretty big, so they are working at home. And in this survey, I asked, what worries or concerns did you have when you were notified of your cancer and when treatment started? In this question, for this question, this is multiple answer question, but the highest score is mental anxiety. So the people who get cancer, so they have a severe mental anxiety. And this is the open answer about the what do you need for the service. And the highest one is emotional and spiritual support, and the environment in which they can talk about their problems and relieve their anxieties. So this is the narratives of the patient with cancer. So for example, they need the positive attitude toward the treatment and the warmth of people around me, the presence of people who are there for. So that from that, the answer shows that once people are diagnosed with cancer, the family and friend think the person has changed, And of course, they care the person, but they care too much, and the patient, so cancer patient feel uncomfortable, too much kindness, or too much care for word or attitude. So this is also the tips by the cancer patient. Many people want somewhere somewhere where they can talk about their anxiety and worrying. And this is the answer of the question, which asked what to expect in 5 years other than medical technology and policies. In this question, so they answered kind of the same thing. The consulting to relieve anxiety, establishment of a consultation service that can be easily accessed like this. And also some answered awareness of cancer patient will. That is really important, I think. So this is the figure which I made by using a word cloud. I have made this response more visually appealing. So while treatment is, of course, a major concern for cancer patient, you can see the big treatment word. But at the same time, support to reduce anxiety and concern is also considered a very important aspect. The word of engagement, you can see, and the physical support and mental support, mental health care, spiritual support. This is all the people with cancer need and expect. So what do we need for a patient and what can we do? So according to my survey for the 3,000 cancer patients, we can summarize the correct medical information and financial support and support at work, because even people got cancer, many people work at company or organization. So support at workplace is very desirable. And peer support. So peer support, have you ever heard that? The peer support means the support, mutual support by cancer patient. It is kind of the narrow definition, mutual support by the cancer patient. However, peer can be, many people can be the peer, not only the patient. So if one think to support the cancer patient in the same stage and same line, they can be said the peer. And support for daily life. Yeah, of course, yes, needed. And also the emotional support. So these kind of support are needed by the cancer patient. And to cover and to meet their needs, the system and environment and awareness to support mental and life concern is necessary. So that is called engagement for people to run on and encourage professionals, family members, and general publics. So people understand what the cancer, what cancer affects the people, the patient. And also, and even if the people are diagnosed as cancer, to continue their work and their lifestyle and relationship with their family and friends. So all these, so people with cancer also living in the community as a neighbor. So we can remind the social capital in this context as well. So I'm talking about the cancer patient today. However, some other disease like a stroke or heart attack, heart disease, and physical disability, almost all are applied and think the same framework of the illness experience and sick role. Surgery, the noise. Okay. So the left one is lung cancer, and the second left is gastric cancer, stomach cancer, and the third one is stomach cancer, gastric cancer, and the second right is the breast cancer. And
Madam,
yes.
We are on the slide where you were showing males and females, the blue and the yellow line.
Yes, blue is male and yellow is female.
Oh, and madam, the y-axis 47.5, 37.4. This is the percentage of
percentage of the people who take the cancer screening test.
Right.
You understand? Okay. And from, yes, so even in the cancer screening test in Japan, people can get it for free. However, only less than half percentage of people get the cancer screening test. As you know, if the cancer was diagnosed in the very early stage, like a stage 0 or stage 1, people can survive the prevalence of the people live very high, almost the treatment can be effective for the early stage cancer. However, to find the early stage cancer, the cancer screening test is the most you must take this test. However, many people lose this opportunity in Japan. How about in India? Okay.
Madam, in India, we do screening mostly for cervical cancer and oral cancer mostly.
Oral cancer.
And cervical cancer screening.
I see. So does it cost a lot or it's free?
It is a cost. Nothing is done free, madam. In some public sector hospitals, probably they may do free. But not all tests are free.
Okay. And how many people take the test? The percentage of the population?
Madam, usually we do not collect data for this kind, but when they come to the hospital and the doctor advises, then they get done. Otherwise, they just don't walk in and get a screening test done. But in the private sector, they get it done.
Thank you very much. So not everybody can get some kind of the cancer screening test in India.
Madam, in Japan, what is the most common screening test that they do, if I may ask?
Common screening test. The cancer?
Which cancers are mostly screened?
You can see the lung cancer. However, we can take several cancer at the same time. Lung cancer, stomach cancer, and coronary cancer, and breast cancer. But it depends on the people, but yeah, we have a kind of the coupon to get a cancer screening test. So maybe it depends on the people, but 4 or 5 screening test coupon every year. So we use that coupon to get a cancer screening test.
Right, madam. Thank you.
So now I'll just introduce about the individual model and social model of illness and disability. So individual model, and this is the idea that people with disability face difficulties because they have a disabilities and illness or disability should be treated with medical care. And in the other hand, social model is the idea that society create barrier and that it is the responsibility for society to remove them, and approaching the concept of universal design and increasing is introduced. So if we apply the cancer, the individual model, the sick model is still has a meaning because cancer patient need to recover to work or to return the previous social role. However, if we think from the social model, people with illness and disability have the opportunity to participate in the society, and to make this kind of environment is the responsibility for the society. So I, as a sociologist, the social model is very important and need to be promoted in the society. And then the cancer patient need a environment. For example, so sometimes they need to go to the hospital for get chemotherapy or for example, the once a week. So the company allowed the cancer patient to take therapy once a week, and they need to, the company people need to make a regulation of the employer's work regulation to associate with the lifestyle of the cancer patient. And from individual demand to social needs. So this is also the basic idea of sociology. And in this concept, the social problem is not the personal trouble. And it is from the social constructionism perspective. The Wright Mills wrote about classic distinction between personal trouble and public issues in the sociological imagination in 1959. The personal trouble refer to the problem affecting individuals as well as other members of society. The typically blame of the individual's own personal and moral failing. So illness and disease, it's the same thing. Sometimes illness and disease can be considered personal trouble. However, once we think it is public issues, the thing has different. The public issues whose source lie in the social structure and culture of the society. So if we think that disease and disability are the social problems which affect the individual, this problem can be solved by the social aspect. So it is also, we can refer to Berger and Luckman. They wrote about the social problem in their publication. The demand for help for patient is not a subjective demand. The objective that support need for patient are not subjective demand, but need for living. So if we stand in the social constructionism, and especially the taking the social, not the individual trouble, but the social problem, social issues, the situation for the patient, not only the cancer patient, but the patient and people with disability can have more the feasibility to participate in the society. And this can be realized if we have the concept of the social capital. So now you learn about the mechanism of the the social construction is and how to improve the status of the people with disability and illness by using the concept of social capital. So thank you very much. So this is my lecture today.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you.
May I ask another question?
No. Please don't ask a question. What is your name?
Age, sir.
Why don't you ask questions during the tutorials?
Okay, sir. Okay. Sorry, sir.
I'm writing these things time and again. Then we have specific time for the lectures,
Extremely sorry, sir.
Right. So please keep your questions. What I'm telling you, please keep your questions ready, and the resource persons are available during the tutorials to answer these questions and any other question. But when you ask question during a lecture, then the flow of lecture gets disrupted, right? And we encourage asking questions. I'm writing it in the WhatsApp group, and basically during the tutorials, we are basically making you all to ask questions, right? Because asking question is very important. Anyway, thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Miwako Hosoda.
Thank you very much for your attention.
For delivering a wonderful lecture. And the second lecture, basically, the lecture 6 will be delivered by me. So, Professor Hosoda, you can rejoin during the tutorial time to answer the questions which the participant may have during your lecture, right? And if you want to attend this lecture, that is your choice, but you are basically free for next 1 hour, so you can have your own comfort, right, ma'am? So
yeah, very noted. Thank you.
Okay. So now, participants, just 1 minute's break, and then we will have the second lecture in continuity. Not break in any technical sense, but just to arrange my PPT so that I can start my lecture.
Recording in progress.
Okay. So welcome. And now we have the please. Now we have the next lecture, that is lecture 6, and please bear for a second, because this is the conference room. Okay, yes, it's done. So now the next topic is communicable and non-communicable disease in India, understanding the challenges, right? You can keep your questions ready, right? You can write the questions in chat box also, and we will take up the questions during the tutorials. The tutorials are the main for this. If there is any specific question which you want to ask during the lecture itself, because otherwise you are unable to understand, in that situation, you can write the question in the chat box and I will respond to that, right? So primarily, before starting my lecture, I just want to introduce myself. Basically, I have authored few books, and Sociology of Health is one of those books that I think is very helpful for the students interested in understanding health from the sociological perspective. And then another book is Sociology of Sanitation, that is again looking at the larger public health perspective. And then there are two edited volumes. One is Maternal Health in India, and another is Health Dynamics and Marginalized Communities. So I have been trying to look at health from various perspectives over a longer period of time. Now we come directly to the topic. What do we understand by disease? You know, till now we have not discussed basically the basic or the core concepts related to health and disease. For a fair understanding of the topic, the newcomers, we need to have some kind of basic understanding related to the basic concepts also. So World Health Organization has defined health, and we all are familiar with the definition given by World Health Organization, that health is a state of complete well-being and not disability or infirmity. So what is the definition of disease? There is no universally accepted definition of disease because disease is contextual. Very often, disease is also considered as cultural because health is also a cultural concept. But there is an effort to define disease in a very objective way. I have quoted here some of the popular definitions given by the important sources like the Webster Dictionary. It defines disease as a condition in which body health is impaired, a departure from the normal state of health, an alteration of the human body, interrupting the performance of vital functions. That means when the body is not functioning the way it is supposed to function under normal circumstances, then that may be identified as a condition of the body or some part or organ of the body in which its functions are disrupted or dearranged. Again, the focus is on some kind of disruption in the functioning of the body. But there are sociologists basically who have also tried to define disease. So Cookerham and Ritchie mentioned that a disease is considered an adverse physical state consisting of a physiological dysfunction within an individual. So physiological, that is related to the body and the functioning of the body within an individual, as compared to an illness, which is often considered as a psychological awareness of the disease, or sickness, that is a social state of recognition of that disease. So there are concepts which look at the trajectories in continuity. There is a situation like disease, then there is a situation like illness, and there is a situation like sickness. So this is often identified as the illness trajectory. That means disease is the point of origin, and then the self-awareness about that is generally identified as illness, and then sickness when there is a social recognition. From a sociological point of view, disease is considered a social phenomenon occurring in all societies and defined in terms of the particular forces prevalent in society, right? But then there are sociological perspectives on that, theoretical perspectives. Basically, the students who are not coming from sociological background, they are not familiar with this. I will not talk about these things. I'll keep my discussion very simple so that people from any background can understand the things. But yes, the students of sociology do understand that there are different theoretical perspectives like the functionalist perspective, Marxist perspective, symbolic interactionist perspective, which also try to understand disease. However, what is popular, what is generally considered as the common denominator is the biomedical model. The biomedical model means which is basically related to the biological sciences and the medical sciences biomedical model. The biomedical model of disease regards disease as the consequence of certain malfunctions of the human body. It is based on following assumptions. Now, these assumptions are actually very important. This basically, when we look at disease from a biomedical perspective, then certain assumptions basically guide us. When you go to a doctor for getting treated, then certain assumptions are basically operating. Now, these are very important. What are those assumptions? That disease is an organic condition, that means it is related to any of the organs of the human body. Then disease is a temporary organic state that can be eradicated, cured by medical intervention. That is the next assumption, that when some kind of disease is occurring, then this is basically some sort of temporary organic state, some sort of malfunctioning of the organs of the body. However, sometimes we also find that the word temporary is actually challengeable, because sometimes it happens that we can never get recovered from certain specific type of disease. Then disease makes an individual sick, who then becomes the object of treatment. Now that is very important, basically. Because a person, when he is becoming sick, that means when there is a social recognition of that disease, then that individual becomes an object of treatment, object of intervention, because then medical science operates, makes interventions, suggests some kind of medicine, surgery, or whatsoever. Then disease is treated after the symptoms appear. The application of medicine is a reactive healing process, right? So when there are certain specific symptoms, then only disease will get the kind of identification that it needs or requires. Without the appearance of symptoms, normally the disease is not identified. It may happen that because of some accidental intervention, that somebody may get to know about a disease. For example, somebody had some kind of problem, or he or she went for an ultrasound, and because of the report of the ultrasound, he may get to know that there is something happening in the body that he or she was not even aware of, and because there was no symptoms. Sometimes cancer is also diagnosed as an accidental finding kind of thing. So symptoms are important, and biomedical science primarily looks at disease from the perspective of the symptoms. Then disease is treated in a medical environment. When there is recognition of the occurrence of disease, then for the intervention, a medical environment is required. Now, the medical environment will depend upon the kind of medical system which is being used. There are different systems of medicine. We have the allopathic system of medicine, and at the same time, we have different traditional systems of medicine. In Indian context, we know that there are Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, homeopath systems of medicine. Some of these are popular in the Western world also. But the medical environment is important. And then biomedical science has made a massive contribution to key areas of health, for example, antibiotics and vaccinations. So as of now, the biomedical model is considered as the most popular system of medicine because of the specific interventions related to the antibiotics, vaccination, etc. However, Anthony Giddens says that over the past few decades, the biomedical model of disease and health has been the object of growing criticism. Now, there is another important critique emerging in the social sciences, and that critique is actually somehow questioning the role of the biomedical sciences in identifying the disease, or sometimes even in suggesting the treatment related to disease. Now we come to the specific topic, that is the communicable and non-communicable disease. And for that, we need to understand classification of disease. In popular uses, disease is classified multiple ways. Sometimes in terms of the specific organ of the body which is getting affected, because sometimes we say that someone is having heart disease or respiratory disease or kidney disease kind of thing. That means identifying on the basis of the affected organ. Sometimes we identify disease on the basis of the causative agent, right? That which agent has caused this disease. For example, we say that a viral or some kind of chemical poisoning or physical injury or some of those other things, right? Basically looking at the disease from the perspective of the causation or the causative agent. The viral is the very most common word. Then biological agents include multiple vectors, like sometimes it could be a virus, sometimes it could be bacteria, sometimes it could be protozoa or fungi or metazoa or several other agents. I think the students from biological sciences do have a better understanding of these things. Then some chemical agents also cause disease, like the pesticides or the industrial pollution or the food poisoning, food additives, pollutants, etc. Then there are also some kind of physical agents like radiation, light, ultraviolet rays, heat, etc. So there are different types of causative agents on the basis of which diseases are generally identified. But the most popular classification of disease is actually this communicable and non-communicable disease. A communicable disease is basically an infectious one which can communicate from one person to another person through some or the other vector. And a non-communicable is something which is not communicating from one person to another person or not communicating through some vector, right? But we need to have a deeper understanding of this because during COVID, we have witnessed basically COVID globally as a global pandemic, right? And you all may remember what kind of problem we faced during the COVID. And COVID is a communicable disease, it's a viral disease. So we need to have a deeper understanding of this communicable and non-communicable also, because the treatment process and the preventive aspects related to causation of these diseases are very important, and that will depend upon the nature of the disease. Communicable, which is also identified as infectious disease, are those diseases for which biological agents or their products are the cause and that are transmissible from one individual to another. The disease process begins when the agent is able to lodge and grow within the body of the host. So one host, that is one individual, maybe some animal, right? So when we are talking about a host, it is not necessary that we are talking about human beings only. It may be animals also, whosoever is the host of that particular agent. The process of lodgement and growth of a microorganism or virus in the host is called infection. The communicable diseases remain an important concern for communities. Of the 9.2 million cases of tuberculosis that occur in the world every year, nearly 1.9 million are in India, accounting for 1/5 of the global tuberculosis cases. Now, tuberculosis is one of the important communicable disease. You may be aware of this. Then malaria is again a communicable disease. Then HIV/AIDS is a communicable disease. COVID, a communicable disease. Just like that, chikungunya, dengue, etc. are also communicable disease. These communicate from one person to another person. And just a second. Setting battery. Right. So we all are basically familiar with this communicable disease in such a way. Now we would be interested in knowing. We would be interested in knowing the extent of spread of this communicable disease also, right? But before that, we would like to understand the non-communicable or the non-infectious disease also. And this is very important because when we will talk about the epidemiological transition, then we will need to understand these things again. The non-communicable disease are a result of combination of genetic, physiological, environmental, and behavioral factors. Communicable diseases are caused because of the specific agents. You are not responsible for the causation of that disease that way. Only the immune system of the person is basically responsible for that to some extent. But the non-communicable diseases are very specific in the sense that there are lots of factors which may be responsible. The genetic factors could be very responsible for that, very much responsible for that. Genetic means from parents to the children. Then the physiological, the functioning of the body can be very important component of that. Then the environmental factor, the specific environment where we are living in, right? That means the external factors are also responsible for that. And the behavioral factors, basically the behavioral aspects, the lifestyle, quality of life, all these factors are responsible for that, right? So these conditions include the cardiovascular disease. Anybody is having heart disease, the cardiovascular disease, so that will be identified as a non-communicable disease. Then cancer, in the previous session, we talked about cancer, that's very important. And cancer is not a communicable, but it is a non-communicable disease. Diabetes, now increasingly, we are witnessing the spread of diabetes, right? Almost everywhere, the problem related to diabetes is increasing. In the common uses, this is also identified as sugar-related disease. Then the respiratory disease, something which is related to the breathing system and metabolism kind of thing. So respiratory diseases are again very important, and the mental health related diseases are also very important. These are all non-communicable, non-infectious. Basically, they originate in the individuals. NCDs are one of the major challenges for public health in the 21st century, not only in terms of human suffering they cause, but also the harm they inflict on the socio-economic development of the country. So non-communicable diseases are very important, not only for the individuals or the families, but also for the society and the state, because of the huge burden of that disease in the society at large. Just few sentences about the spread. The NCDs kill approximately 41 million people, 71% of the global death worldwide each year, as per the 2019 figures, including 14 million people who die too young, between the age of 30 and 70. The majority of the premature NCD deaths are preventable. Even the non-communicable diseases are preventable if we have a proper understanding of the causes and trajectory and the treatment process. In India, nearly 5.8 million people, as per the WHO report, die from the non-communicable disease. And what are those non-communicable diseases? Some of these are basically heart and lungs disease, then stroke, that is basically heart stroke, brain stroke, cancer, diabetes, etc. Every year, or in other words, 1 in 4 Indian has a risk of dying from non-communicable disease before reaching to the age of 70. Now, this statement is very important, basically, right? And this statement is taken from the Government of India website. That is why I mentioned this, because this is a very powerful statement that 1 in 4 Indian has a risk of dying from non-communicable disease, and the spread of non-communicable disease is increasing very fast. That we will see in the next slides to come. Now, just we talked about the causative agents. I would like to add here some deeper understanding on the causative agents, right? An agent is basically the substance, living or non-living, or a force, tangible or intangible, that is responsible for the causation of the disease, right? So an agent needs to be understood and identified first. So there are different types of agents. There are biological agents like the virus or the bacteria, etc. Then there are nutrient agents. You know, that is very important. That is why I'm talking about these things again, because nutrition is something very important for the proper functioning of the human body. We all know about nutrition because we all consume plenty of food, but the food as such is not giving us the kind of specific things that the body is in need of. Rather, we get those things from the nutrition, right? So we all know that we need carbohydrate or protein, or for that matter, fat also. But along with these things, we also need calcium, magnesium, etc., right? Sodium. And without the specific quantity of all these components, the human body or mind cannot function properly or appropriately. So the nutrients are very important. See, vitamin D, we all know about that. Vitamin A, vitamin B, these are all the components of the nutrition. And if there is a deficiency related to that, then the body will get victimized. Now, this is the understanding that we need to develop, because disease is not only caused because of the impact of the specific biological agents or the chemical agents. disease is also getting caused because of deficiency of certain things, and nutrients are those important things. So we talked about the physical, chemical agents also in the previous slide. Now there is one more important factor, that is the social agents. It is also necessary to consider the social agents of disease. These are poverty, smoking, abuse of drugs, alcohol, unhealthy lifestyle, social isolation, and then the maternal deprivation, etc. Now, these are the specific social situations which also play a very important role in causation of disease. Let me give you one example. See, one popular disease, not popular, a common disease, tuberculosis. Right. Now, the bacteria of tuberculosis may remain in a dormant condition in n number of people, but the presence of the bacteria in the human body is not basically directly responsible as such for causation of the disease. It is when the immune system of that particular individual is declining, then only this dormant bacteria is getting activated. So a person may have the bacteria of tuberculosis throughout his life, but he may get never affected by tuberculosis because the immune system has suppressed the impact of that bacteria. On the other hand, some person who is having a poor immune system may get exposed to it, and the disease may become visible very soon. So if we try to understand the thing from a medical science or biological science perspective, there is a fight going on between the immune system of the body and those external agents. And if the body is basically suppressing the impact of those external agents, then the body will remain disease-free up to a longer period of time. So what is important here? Basically, the impact of the immune system is important, and this immune system is strongly getting influenced by the social conditions of the living. So certainly the economic condition is very important for that. The lifestyle is very important for that. The quality of life is very important for that. The level of education, the health consciousness, and several other factors are responsible. These are the social agents. And as a student of social science, basically, we also need to understand the impact of those social factors, because communicable disease is strongly getting influenced by the social setting. We have seen during the COVID that a person may get infected by COVID when he or she is coming in contact with other person who is already infected. So this is a social phenomenon. This infection is a social situation. It's a social phenomenon, right? We got to know that more than 95% people remain asymptomatic or unaffected. Now, this unaffected or asymptomatic cannot be basically identified unless we go for a medical examination or medical test. But what makes these people remain asymptomatic or unaffected? It is basically the kind of social setting which is under operation. And that is why we consider disease as a social phenomenon, right? So there are social situations responsible for this. Now, when we look at the social situations, we can identify 2-3 important variables here. One is the public health system. What kind of public health system is there? If you look at the disease trajectory, then the intervention of the healthcare system is very important. If there is a disease in the occurrence and primary health intervention is made at an early stage, then we all know that the disease could be identified, recognized, and due intervention could be made. On the other hand, if that disease is not identified at an early stage, then what will happen? It will continue to grow, develop, mature, and then create severe problems. Now, you all may be familiar with the word chronic disease. What is this chronic disease? A chronic disease is something which has developed in the body for a longer period of time that remain perhaps undiagnosed and certainly untreated, right? And the chronic diseases create the most important, most severe burden on the human being, right? So if you see how these chronic diseases develop, then we can understand the importance of the larger social setup or the social situation. And here, public health system does play a very important role. Then availability of basic food, then safe drinking water, potable water, then proper sanitation system, then the garbage disposal system, and all those factors play very important role. Then if we look at these things further, then governance is appearing to be a very important factor. In India, we see that the prevalence of communicable disease in certain states is lesser, and in other states that is higher. Why these things are happening? Because of the state of public health, or you can say because of the governance and policy related issues. So this is the larger social setup under which diseases actually operate. Now we come to the next part of the lecture, that is understanding the challenges. We have developed fair understanding about the communicable and the non-communicable disease, right? If you want to know a little more about the communicable and non-communicable disease, then I have prepared this slide for you. Here we can understand what are the different types of communicable and non-communicable disease, and I've also included the latest available figures on that in Indian context, right? We'll talk about this, but before that, let me talk about the life expectancy. Life expectancy we all are aware of. Basically, at the time of birth, we calculate that what is the in terms of statistics and probability, what is the expected life that this newborn baby may have under these external conditions or living conditions, right? So there is a statistical way to calculate this life expectancy. We will not get into those statistical details, but we need to have a fair understanding of what kind of life expectancy is prevailing in India. Professor Miwako Hosoda also talked about life expectancy in the first lecture. By now, I think all of you have some kind of understanding about this. But let us try to understand what kind of improvement is there in India, or what are the specific challenges. In 1990, that is almost 30 years back, life expectancy at birth in India was 58.3 years for males and 59.7 years for females, right? So 30 years back, we had much lower life expectancy, only 58.3 years for males and 59.7 years for females. By 2016, life expectancy at birth increased to 66.9 years for males and 70.3 years for females, right? That means there is an increase of almost 11 to 12 years in the life expectancy of males and females in last 30 years. Now, this data could be deconstructed to understand the importance and significance of so many things. What are those factors which are responsible for increase in life expectancy? Definitely, the health system is one very important factor. But along with that, there are other socio-economic and cultural conditions. And we all know that the political environment is playing a very important role in deciding these factors. So all these factors together play a very important role in increasing the life expectancy. When we were seeing that Japan is having one of the highest life expectancy, that means the importance of these socio-cultural or political economic factors is very important, along with the public health system related factors. India has made substantial progress in improving the life expectancy at birth. However, life expectancy varied widely between the states of India. Tariq Anwar, please unmute yourself. Now, if we look at it from the perspective of the disparity or states, then we get to know that the range was from 66.8 years in Uttar Pradesh to 78.7 years in Kerala for females. That means in the year 2016, in India itself, we have 2 states, and the difference in life expectancy in these 2 states is of 10 years. That means a child taking birth in Kerala is expected to live 10 years more or 12 years more than a child taking birth in Uttar Pradesh or some of the other North Indian states like Bihar, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, etc. Then we can again notice another important thing, the difference, the gender difference, that is the male and female. The male and female, we can see this, that life expectancy of females is more than the life expectancy of the males. This is again sociologically very important factor, right? I hope you will keep in mind this thing when we will talk about the rest of the things or that we will discuss in the next slides. Now we come back to the communicable and non-communicable issues, or communicable and non-communicable disease. Our government of India has identified some of the states as EAG states, that is Empowered Action Group states. The states are basically Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, Rajasthan, Uttaranchal, and Uttar Pradesh under the program NRHL, right? What does this reflect? This Empowered Action Group state, that is EAG state, basically talks about those states where the indicators related to health are not that good, or which are, say, poor, right? And that is why some kind of action is required in those states. And so these 8 states are identified as EAG. In simple words, you can say that these are having poor health indicators. So this data basically classifies the states of India in 3 categories. One, that is EAG states. Second is the Northeast states. Northeast India, you all are familiar with the Northeast India states, and then the other states, that is the remaining states. There is a huge discrepancy in the performance of these 3 group of states, right? So sometimes we talk about the pan-India figures. It doesn't talk about the kind of inequality or disparity which is existing among the states. So I have included these 3 groups for a fair understanding related to the prevalence or occurrence of this disease. See, there is one category of disease which is identified as communicable, maternal, neonatal, and nutritional disease. And the other category is identified as the non-communicable disease. So not all the diseases included in this first category are communicable, right? There is a broader categorization, that is communicable, maternal, neonatal, and nutritional disease. Now, which diseases come under this? HIV, AIDS, and tuberculosis, then diarrhea, respiratory, and other common infectious disease, then neglected tropical disease and malaria, some of the specific fevers, then maternal disorder, neonatal disorder, nutritional deficiency, and other communicable maternal, neonatal, and nutritional disease. These are the specific disease or group of disease which are identified in this larger group. Let us see their prevalence. The figures are given in percentage. So you can see that this communicable, maternal, neonatal, and nutritional disease is basically comprising of 34.6% here in the EAG state. That is the Empowered Action Group states. That means Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, Rajasthan, Uttaranchal, and Uttar Pradesh, where the indicators related to health are normally poor, not performing very well. So there is a huge burden of these diseases in these states. Then we have the northeast states. Again, we can see that the burden is much bigger, that is 32.1%. And in the rest of the states, which basically include the developed states, this burden is much lesser to the EAG states, that is 20.2. So if we go by only the pan-India figure, we get to know that it is only 27.5. But if we see the declassified or decategorized conditions, then we find that no, the situation is very poor in the EAG states. Now we can see the specific communicable disease like HIV/AIDS and tuberculosis. There is a huge prevalence in the EAG states, that is 6.4%, and in the other states this prevalence is 4.3, say up to 60% less. Then diarrhea, lower respiratory and other common infectious disease, there is a huge prevalence in the EAG states, 19.9, almost 20%. If you compare this with the other states, then you can see that this is like half of that, or say 55% of this, right? 11.2 for the other states and 19.9 for the EAG states. Now we can understand that diarrhea or lower respiratory and other common infectious diseases, these are the minor diseases caused because of the preventable situations. If we can provide quality drinking water to people, and if we can protect this hygiene level of people, then these diseases could be prevented from occurrence. Because communicable diseases are the preventable diseases. The most important thing about communicable disease is this, that this could be prevented easily through either the policy interventions or through improvement in the quality of life, right? So that is the situation. HIV/AIDS and tuberculosis are also preventable, right? Because all communicable diseases are preventable. But basically the prevalence of diarrhea is still one of the biggest killer of the children in this country. Then we come to some of the other diseases. Their prevalence is very much there, although the death caused because of these are much lesser. That is the tropical disease and the malaria, 1.1% in the EAG group and 0.6% in the other states group. And then we have the maternal disorder, 0.6 in these EAG states and 0.3 in the other states. Then neonatal disorder, 4.9 in these EAG states, 4.6 in the northeast states, and 2.8 in the major states. So by going through these figures, you may have developed some kind of understanding about the prevalence and pattern of this communicable disease in Indian states. Now we will go to the next slide and talk about the non-communicable disease, right? But for the sake of your fair understanding, basically the disease, communicable disease, non-communicable disease, and the death caused because of injuries. These three larger categories make 100% of the deaths, right? So basically the deaths are classified because of the three, under the three category, because of the communicable, because of the non-communicable, and because of the injuries. But we have not talked much about the injuries, only the figures are getting reflected over here, because this lecture is about the communicable and non-communicable. We understood about the communicable. Now let us try to understand the non-communicable, because this is a big thing. Now cancer is a big factor. We can see that in the EAG states, 7.8% basically deaths caused because of cancer. And in the other states, 8.7%. But this prevalence is much higher in the northeastern states. This is 9.5. Now we can understand the geographical conditions also, and the socioeconomic and other factors also, because there is a differentiation in the pattern of prevalence of cancer in Indian states. Then comes the next important thing, and this is again very challenging, that is the cardiovascular disease, which are generally identified as heart disease. Now you can see the difference between the EAG states and the other states. In the other states, this is 34.5, huge. almost more than, you can say 55 to 60% than what is prevailing in the EAG states. Now you can wonder why this kind of difference is prevailing. And that is why research is required. That is why more micro level studies are required to understand. Because in India, the prevalence of cardiovascular disease is like 28.1%. But if you go by the states, you can see that there is a huge difference among the different categories of states. If you go by the statistics state-wise, you'll find further disturbance or disturbing figures. But it was technically not possible to discuss the cases related to all the states. But you can go through the National Family Health Survey data and you'll find the fair figures over there. Then comes the chronic respiratory disease. Now, respiratory disease is basically one of the important factors of causation of infant mortality and neonatal mortality, right? And then it also affects the individual very badly in the old age, right? So respiratory diseases are very important, and these are basically the non-communicable disease. That means they find their origin in the specific individual. And of course, the immediate environment is very much responsible for that, because we have already discussed the causative factors. Then comes some other figures like diseases related to liver, then digestive disease related to stomach, then neurological disorders, then mental and substance use disorders, and then diabetes. Now, diabetes is again a big challenge. You can see the figures related to diabetes. As of today in India, 6.5% people are basically, 6.5% mortalities are caused because of diabetes. And diabetes is very often identified as a lifestyle disease, the sedentary lifestyle or non-inclusion of the physical activity or several other disorders. Of course, a medical science student can explain all the causative factors of disease, but as a student of social science, we can say that it is definitely, it has a lot of the bearing of the lifestyle that we all are living and the kind of food habit that we are having. But of course, there are genetic factors also. We cannot deny the role of the genetic factors, but there are environmental factors. But keeping in mind all those factors, we can say that diabetes is actually increasing in India. And then there are other type of disorders also. So by now, you got an idea about the prevalence of the communicable and non-communicable disease in Indian states. And we also get an idea about the specific disease, right, within the communicable and non-communicable category. So we talked about the life expectancy that is definitely increasing, but along with that, what is happening that the prevalence of a specific type of disease is also on the rise. Now we talked about the communicable and non-communicable. Now someone may think that how do we basically see the relationship between the communicable and non-communicable? And to what extent the prevalence of communicable or non-communicable disease is a challenging position for the nation state, or which category out of these two is more challenging or more disturbing, right? So I've tried to see this by making use of some of the other terms. One very important term here is the epidemiological transition. You will see this epidemiological transition in the literature related to health, community medicine, and of course, the social science people also address to this situation. What is an epidemiological transition? Basically, when the burden caused by the non-communicable disease is more than the burden caused by the communicable disease, this is known as epidemiological transition, right? Now, communicable disease were the largest killer till few decades ago world over. But because of the invention of or discovery of or say emergence of antibiotics, right, the communicable disease basically got controlled. Most of the pandemics that the world has witnessed or epidemics that the world had witnessed are basically caused because of the communicable disease. You might have heard from your family members, maybe your grandparents or your parents, that there was a time in India when hundreds of or thousands of people got killed because of a disease known as cholera, right? That was a communicable disease. When there was an outcome of cholera, then people were unable to protect themselves from that. As of now, the prevalence of the communicable disease has been controlled. But the outburst of COVID basically negated the idea that we have controlled the communicable disease. The Western world got adversely affected because of COVID, although there was a general understanding or feeling over there that they have already controlled the spread of communicable disease. So there were so many commentaries coming from the medical experts or the health experts during the COVID period, and it was very frequently stated that the world will continue to struggle from the communicable disease. We can never ever have complete control over communicable, because although we have the antibiotics or we have the vaccines, but there may be outburst of some kind of or the other kind of communicable disease world over, right? So the balance between the prevalence of communicable and non-communicable is generally explained by making use of this epidemiological transition. Over the last 26 years, the country's disease pattern have shifted. Mortality due to the communicable, maternal, neonatal, and nutritional disease has declined substantially, and India's population is living longer, meaning that non-communicable disease and injuries are increasingly contributing to overall disease burden. See, this is very important public health understanding. When a state is successful in controlling the spread of communicable disease, then the public health system is considered to be very strong, right? Because communicable disease is actually preventable, 100% preventable in many cases. So if a state is still witnessing the spread of communicable disease, that means the public health system is very weak there. So the developing countries or the underdeveloped countries do have the spread of communicable disease, but the developed part of the world have tried to control. Vaccination is the biggest basically intervention there. And we know that in India, there is vaccination related to many of the communicable diseases. Earlier, we used to see smallpox or chickenpox, but because of vaccination, we have controlled that. That means communicable disease is preventable by applying a better life, better quality of life, and by applying the specific vaccines or the preventive measures. And so what is happening, that the prevalence of communicable disease is declining. Simultaneously, we also need to control the spread of non-communicable. But what is happening, that the non-communicable is actually keeping on increasing, and we are witnessing the occurrence of new forms of non-communicable disease. The prevalence of cancer was not that high 20 years back, or diabetes we just talked about. Diabetes was not that high till 20 or 30 years back. That means that there is some kind of change occurring in the lifestyle or in the physical environment where we are living, or the quality of water or the quality of air that we all are breathing. Pollutants are actually responsible for causation of several carcinogenic forces, which are basically responsible for causation of cancer. So this kind of transition is taking place within the domains of communicable and non-communicable, and we all need to understand this. Then I would like to talk about one more thing, and that is very important sociologically, or from the perspective of economics, from the perspective of social sciences, as well as medical sciences. Now, what is the actual burden of this disease? See, when disease is caused, it creates a kind of disability, right? Because the person who is affected by the disease is not available for the work, or the normal lifestyle that has created a kind of disability. So we have been talking about life expectancy, but this is an important question that even if a country is having a high life expectancy, but if say out of the 80 years that a person is expected to live, if 5 years or 6 years or 7 years or 10 years, he or she is remaining sick, then what is the use of that enhanced life expectancy? That means this is a very important parameter, that it is not enough to increase the life expectancy. It is also important to look at the disability adjusted life years. And so as of today, the larger or the macro level studies are also taking care of the disability adjusted life years. I thought of talking about it because some of you might be interested in looking forward for the research in this domain, right? Social capital has a very important role in basically addressing to the problems related to this disability adjusted life years, right? Let me explain this first, and then I'll make my other comments. According to World Health Organization, mortality does not give a complete picture of burden of disease borne by individuals in different populations, right? Because if you want to see the impact of disease, then mortality is not the only indicator, right? Because not every disease always causes mortality. People do live with the disease. So what about those figures? Earlier we discussed the mortality related figures, but at the same time, it is also important to see that even if that particular disease is not causing mortality, but if this is causing a kind of disability or inability, then what would be the kind of challenge that the person might be facing? Or what would be the burden on the social security measures for the different state? See, India is a welfare state. It is the responsibility of the government to take care of the health needs of the people. But if the people at large remain affected by the chronic disease, which are not causing the mortality, but which are causing disability, then the problem would be very different, even from the perspective of, say, employment and economic growth. The overall burden of disease is assessed using the disability adjusted life years, a time-based measure that combines years of life lost due to premature mortality and years of life lost due to time lived in states of less than full health, or years of healthy life lost due to disability. There are several terms used here. Just to simplify it, I would like to say that if someone is living for say 60, 70, 80 years, then out of that period, how many years he or she is living with some kind of disability caused because of disease. When I'm talking about disability, I'm not talking about the persons with disability kind of category, because those are well-defined disabilities. I'm talking about the inability to live the normal life, the inability to join the work, the inability to perform the normal responsibilities that a healthy person is supposed to perform during his or her normal life. So these types of disabilities are talking about those kind of disability. There can be a short-term disability and a long-term disability. The disability which is remaining within 1 year is generally identified as a short-term disability, and which goes beyond that is identified as a long-term disability. So there is a very important parameter to look at the health indicators in terms of this disability adjusted life years also. Disability adjusted life years are a summary measure of the health loss burden caused by different conditions and take into account both premature mortality and disability in one combined measure. India had 33% of the total DLYS from communicable, maternal, neonatal, and nutrition related disease. 33% of the daily from communicable, etc. disease, 55% from non-communicable disease, and 12% from injuries in 2016. And this was 61%, and 9% in 1990. That means from 1990 to 2016, there is some kind of change in the composition. In 1990, because of communicable disease, the daily was 61%. And in 2016, because of communicable disease, this is 33%. That means the impact of communicable disease has decreased. That means we have made some kind of improvement in the primary health care. See, to prevent the occurrence of communicable disease, we need to have a robust primary health care system. And to have a control over the non-communicable disease, we need to have a robust tertiary healthcare system. So when you look at the health scenario in terms of the public health facility, then you need to understand that what kind of disease composition or burden the society or the state is having. And these things are basically looked at from the epidemiological perspective also. So I've tried to make you understand basically the concepts related to communicable and non-communicable disease, and also try to understand the kind of spread that we have at all India level and also under 3 specific states category. So thank you very much for being with me. I hope you understood the concepts, and this lecture was helpful in answering some of the queries for which you have joined this course. We will take up the questions during the tutorial class, and I also want to add that some of the candidates have prepared their presentation also for the tutorial class. We'll take up those presentations also. So in the first hour of the tutorials, we will take up all the queries that you might have written well, and that you can ask to Professor Miwako Hosoda and also to me. So we come to the end of this lecture, right? This is the small list of references that I have used for this lecture. There are 2-3 important books. Anybody interested can note down. I'll share the slides also as the study content for you. And I have used the World Health Organization website also for some of the figures related to Delhi. And I have used one of the reports compiled by 3 agencies, that is Indian Council of Medical Research, Public Health Foundation of India, and Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation, for talking about the burden of disease. So thank you very much for being with me. If there is any quick question coming to someone's mind, you can ask. Otherwise, you can wait for the tutorial. Is there any quick question coming to your mind? Perhaps no. Fine. We will meet again.
Questions, sir, I have a quick question. Sorry.
Yeah, please.
So you just ended with saying that, you know, we live in a welfare state and the state is responsible for ensuring the well-being. So I mean, we don't really see that happening with the health budget cuts, or what we saw at the pandemic, or with the rising sort of prices for medical treatment. So I'm assuming it does not come under the fundamental right ecosystem. I mean, how do we say India is a welfare state then? Because
who is speaking? I'm unable to see the name.
I'm Aparna here.
Aparna, basically this lecture is focused on communicable and non-communicable disease and its spread. We have one more lecture on policy issues, right? Because we have a lecture on universal health coverage also. We'll take up those questions there. But just to satisfy your query, I would like to say that, see, India is progressing. That is why we made comparable figures. What was the situation in 1990 and what is the situation in 2016? So we have moved ahead from 1990 to 2016. And if you can go back to 1950, I mean, you would be surprised to know that life expectancy in 1950 was less than 30. Right? Life expectancy in 1950s was less than 30. So from that state, less than 30, we reached to around 60. And as of now, we are around 70. That means definitely Indian state is playing very important. Definitely the kind of public health system that we are having is playing very important role. And it has its own impact. But yes, this is true that we have not developed complete control over disease prevalence. We'll talk about some of the important disease control programs and eradication programs. You might be aware of the fact that polio was a big killer in India, right? And it was creating huge kind of disability. But as of now, we have almost controlled the spread of polio. I talked about control over the smallpox and chickenpox kind of disease, right? So we have made progress, but yes, we are yet to achieve the target of complete well-being or health for all. So still the journey is basically ongoing, but it won't be fair to say that the government is not doing much. Government is definitely doing much. That is why some of the state governments are performing very well. We need to understand the larger situation or the larger dynamics, right?
Right, sir. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
So we are closing this session and we'll meet again after half an hour, right? For the tutorials. After half an hour, that is at 12:30, we will meet for the tutorials. Okay. Recording closing.
The last slide was